My name is Tori Morrison. I'm 29 years old. 2 days ago, my mother called to tell me I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. Not because of a schedule conflict, not because of travel, because my sister's new rich boyfriend was coming to meet the family, and my presence would embarrass her. I spent my whole life being the one who set the table, washed the dishes, and left before dessert so my sister could shine. I thought I was being a good daughter. Turns out, I was just convenient. What happened the day after Thanksgiving, when that same boyfriend showed up at my door, changed everything my family believed about me, and about themselves. Before I take you back to that phone call, if this story resonates with you, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with it. And if you're watching right now, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you are. Now, let me take you back to last Tuesday evening. The night my mother's phone call cracked something open that had been sealed shut for 29 years. Every Thanksgiving in the Morrison house runs on a system. My mother, Linda, starts planning 3 weeks out. The menu, the centerpiece, the seating chart, everything calibrated to impress whatever neighbors, cousins, or church friends she's invited that year. In our small town outside of Macon, Georgia, Thanksgiving at the Morrisons is an event. People talk about it at the hardware store. They talk about it at the post office. And every single year, I'm the one who makes it happen. I show up at 6 in the morning. I peel potatoes. I baste the turkey. I polish silverware my mother only uses once a year. I arrange flowers. I mop the kitchen floor twice. Once before guests arrive. Once after someone inevitably spills cider. Megan, my older sister, shows up around noon. Hair done. Nails done. She breezes in like a guest at her own family's dinner, kisses Mom on the cheek, and sits down. Mom introduces Megan to everyone. "This is my Megan. She works in fashion in Atlanta." She says it like she's unveiling a painting. She doesn't introduce me. I'm just the woman in the apron, refilling water glasses. Last year, I made Grandma Dot's stuffing from scratch. Her recipe, her cast iron skillet, her technique. Took me 3 hours. When Mrs. Patterson from next door asked about it, Mom smiled and said, "Megan ordered it from that new place downtown." I stood in the kitchen doorway holding a serving spoon. Megan didn't correct her. Mom didn't blink. Grandma Dot wasn't there that year. Her hip was acting up. So I swallowed it, like I always did. This year, though, there was no invitation to swallow. Just silence. For 2 full weeks. Tuesday, 6 days before Thanksgiving. I was in the workshop sanding a drawer front when my phone buzzed on the bench. Mom. I wiped my hands on my jeans and picked up. "Tori, honey." Her voice had that cotton-wrapped quality, soft on the outside, something hard underneath. "I need to talk to you about Thursday." "Okay." "Megan is bringing someone home. His name is Garrett. He's very successful, very well off. This is the first time she's bringing a boyfriend to meet us, and she wants everything to be perfect." I waited. "She feels it would be better if you weren't there this year." I still waited. "You understand, right? Your hands, your clothes. You know how you come across, Tori. She doesn't want Garrett to get the wrong impression of the family. You'd embarrass her." The workshop was silent except for the space heater clicking on and off. I looked down at my hands, calloused from 4 years of shaping walnut and oak, stained with linseed oil in the creases of my knuckles. These same hands built Grandma Dot's bookshelf when she couldn't afford one. They rebuilt the bathroom vanity Mom brags about to her book club, though she tells everyone Ron did it. "I understand," I said. And I hung up. I sat on the stool next to my workbench for a long time. I didn't cry. Something beyond crying was happening. Like the last bolt holding a heavy door had finally slid loose, and the door was swinging open into a room I'd been afraid to enter. My phone lit up 3 times that night. Grandma Dot. Each time I let it ring. I wasn't ready to hear kindness yet. It would have broken me. Here's the thing. This wasn't new. The Thanksgiving call was just the first time someone said it out loud. I'd been cut from Megan's graduation party because my outfit was too casual. I wasn't invited to Mom's friend's baby shower because I don't do small talk well. Christmas 2 years ago, Megan was stressed, so Mom asked me not to come until after dinner, when the dishes needed washing. Each time I told myself it was a one-off, a scheduling thing, a misunderstanding. But this time, Mom handed me the reason on a silver platter. You would embarrass her. Not, we need the space. Not, it's complicated. Just, you the way you are a problem. And if I stayed quiet again, if I nodded and shrank and showed up the next time they needed someone to set the table, then I wouldn't just be invisible, I'd be erased. I checked Megan's Instagram that night, a story from earlier in the day. The dining room at Mom's house, tablecloth pressed, candles out, the good china. Mom, Dad, Megan. All smiling, all dressed up. The caption read, "Getting the house ready for our special guest. Family first." Family first. I counted the faces in the photo. 3. There should have been 4. I almost texted Megan, almost typed out something like, "Really?" Or, "You couldn't at least tell me yourself." But I put the phone down, because the question that actually mattered wasn't why they didn't invite me. The question was, who was this boyfriend that my entire family was willing to erase a daughter for? I'd find out soon enough, just not the way any of us expected. Wednesday morning, I drove to the grocery store and bought a small turkey breast, a bag of Yukon Golds, a can of cranberry sauce, and a bottle of wine. Thanksgiving for one. The cashier, Ruthie, who's known me since I was in braces, looked at my basket and said, "Not going to your mama's this year?" "Busy," I said. Smiled, moved on. That evening, Grandma Dot called again. This time I picked up. Tori Marie Morrison. Full name. Never a good sign. "Your mother tells me you're not coming Thursday. Says you're busy." "I am busy, Grandma." Silence. The kind of silence that only a 78-year-old woman who has raised 3 children, buried a husband, and survived a hip replacement can produce. "I'm old, Tori. Not deaf. And not blind." I pressed my lips together. "You come see me Saturday. That's not a request." "Yes, ma'am." After I hung up, I walked into the workshop. The big project sat in the center of the floor, a dining table and 8 chairs, solid walnut, dovetail joints, 6 months of my life, nearly finished. The client, Callaway Interiors, had ordered it through their project manager. I'd never met the owner, just exchanged specs and sketches through a woman named Dana. Biggest commission I'd ever landed. The invoice on my desk read, $47,000. Thanksgiving Day, I roasted my little turkey breast, made mashed potatoes from Dot's recipe, and ate alone at my kitchen counter. Then I went to the workshop and ran my hand along the tabletop I'd been building for someone else's family dinner. 8 chairs, room for everyone. Friday morning, 7:45. My doorbell rang. I opened the door in sweatpants and a flannel shirt, coffee still in my hand. Mom stood on the porch. No greeting, no happy belated Thanksgiving, just, "Why didn't you answer your phone last night?" Behind her, Dad, hands in his jacket pockets, staring at the welcome mat like it owed him money. And behind them, Megan, jaw tight, eyes darting. Next to her stood a man I'd never seen, tall, dark hair, winter coat that looked like it cost more than my truck. He was the only one who didn't look angry. He looked curious. "Come in," I said, because that's what you do when your family shows up unannounced, even when they forgot you exist 48 hours ago. They filed in. Mom surveyed my living room like she was appraising a crime scene. Megan stayed close to the man. Garrett, I assumed. "Garrett wanted to visit a woodworking shop in town," Mom said, her voice overly casual. "Megan mentioned you might know where it is." I looked at Megan. She looked at the floor. "Which shop?" I asked. "Morrison Woodcraft," Garrett said. "On Birch Street." I set my coffee down. "That's my shop," I said. "Has been for 4 years." The room went very still. Mom's mouth opened, then closed. Megan's hand tightened on Garrett's arm. Dad looked up from the welcome mat for the first time. Garrett turned to Megan, then back to me, then back to Megan. "You said your sister lives out of state." Megan's voice came out thin and fast. It's complicated." It wasn't complicated at all, and every person in that room knew it. Garrett stepped further into the living room. His eyes moved across the walls, past the framed photo of a cherry credenza I'd built 2 years ago, past the black and white shot of Grandma Dot and me standing next to her finished bookshelf, past the small sign by the door that read Morrison Woodcraft, established 2022. Morrison Woodcraft, he said slowly. That's you. That's me. He turned to Megan. You told me you didn't have a sister in town. Garrett, can we not do this here? Megan's voice pitched higher. Her hand was still gripping his arm. He didn't move it away, but he didn't lean in either. Mom jumped in. Garrett, Tori just does a little hobby work in the back. It's nothing. Mrs. Morrison. Garrett's voice was polite, measured, the voice of a man who chairs meetings and fires people gently. I've been trying to meet this artisan for 6 months. My project manager has handled everything, but I've wanted to see the workshop since we placed the order. Mom blinked. 6 months? She said. We commissioned a custom dining table and chairs, solid walnut, hand-cut joinery. Dana, my PM, said the craftsmanship was the best she'd seen in a decade. Nobody spoke. Somewhere in the kitchen, my coffee maker beeped. I watched Mom's expression shift. Confusion first, then something tighter. She didn't know about Callaway Interiors. She didn't know about any of it, because she'd never asked. In 4 years of running the shop, Mom had never once walked through the door. Garrett looked at me. Can I see your workshop? I held his gaze for a second, then nodded. Follow me. The workshop sits behind the house, a converted 2-car garage with a row of tall windows on the south wall. When I opened the double doors, the morning light poured in across the concrete floor, catching the sawdust still floating in the air from yesterday's session. Garrett stopped in the doorway. The table sat in the center of the room, 8 feet long, solid black walnut, the grain running in clean, unbroken lines from one end to the other. The legs had a subtle taper I'd shaped freehand, nothing from a template. Around it, 6 of the 8 chairs were finished, the remaining 2 clamped on the far bench. He walked to the table without a word, ran his fingers along the edge, crouched down and examined the joinery, the dovetails where the apron met the legs. He stood back up. This is mine, he said quietly. This is the Callaway order. I glanced at the invoice pinned to the corkboard above my bench. Callaway Interiors, dining set, custom commission. I looked at Garrett, then back at the invoice, the pieces locked together. You're Callaway Interiors, I said. I'm Callaway Interiors, and you're the one building my dining table. Behind us, in the doorway, Mom and Megan stood shoulder to shoulder. Mom's face had gone white, not embarrassed white, but the color of someone watching a building they constructed start to lean. Megan stared at the table like she'd never seen wood before. Dad lingered a step behind them. He was looking at me, though, not at the table, not at Garrett. At me. And on his face was something I hadn't seen in years. It might have been recognition. Okay, I need to pause here for a second. Standing in that workshop, watching Garrett run his hand across my dining table, the one I'd spent 6 months shaping, joint by joint, while my mother stood behind him with the expression of someone who'd just swallowed her own lie. That was the first time something shifted inside me. My hands, the same hands Mom said would embarrass Megan, the same hands that were too rough for a Thanksgiving dinner table. Those hands were the reason this man drove across town the morning after the holiday. If you've ever been told you weren't enough by the people who should have seen you first, drop a fire emoji in the comments. I see every single one. Now let me tell you what happened next. Because the workshop was just the beginning. Back inside, Garrett was different. Not angry, recalibrating. I know the look. I get it myself when a measurement is off by a 1/16 of an inch and the whole design shifts. He sat at my kitchen table, the one I'd made from reclaimed pine 3 years ago, and talked shop, grain direction, drying techniques, where I source my walnut. His questions were specific, informed. This wasn't small talk. This was a man who understood material. I answered each one the way I answer Dana's emails. Brief, precise, no filler. Then he pivoted. Megan, he said, turning toward her. She was leaning against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. Why didn't you tell me your sister was the artisan? I've been talking about this table for months. You've heard me. Megan's arms tightened. I didn't know. That was a lie. Mom had mentioned my workshop in front of Megan plenty of times, just never with pride. Always with that dismissive flick of the wrist. Tori's still playing with her little wood projects, Megan had heard. She just hadn't listened. Mom stepped in with the rescue play. Well, Tori doesn't really talk about work at family dinners. Garrett, still calm, still measured. She wasn't at the family dinner. The sentence sat in the room like a stone dropped into still water. Nobody moved. Nobody picked it up. Mom's mouth worked for a moment, the reflexive start of a defense she couldn't finish. Because the defense was, we didn't invite her. And she couldn't say that out loud. Not to this man. Not after everything she'd done to impress him. Garrett watched her, patient, waiting. She didn't fill the silence, for once in her life. Megan pulled Garrett toward the hallway, not quite out of earshot. My house isn't that big. Baby, this is awkward. Can we just go? I'll explain everything later. Explain what, exactly? Tori and we have a complicated relationship. She's different. She chose this life. She said this life, the way someone says that neighborhood, cordoned off, lesser, somewhere you drive past. Garrett looked back toward the workshop door. Through the window you could see the table, the chairs, the wall of hand tools, chisels, planes, marking gauges, each one hung with precision. The technical drawings pinned above the bench. This wasn't a hobby shed. This was a production studio. She chose this, Garrett repeated. Can we please just leave? Mom was already pulling on Dad's sleeve. We should go, this isn't… My phone rang. I checked the screen. Grandma Dot. I answered. Tori? Dot's voice, sharp as a finish nail. You sound funny. Is someone there? The whole family, actually. A pause, then very quietly. Finally. I didn't know what she meant. Not yet. I'm coming over, she said. Grandma, you're hip. Margaret next door has a car and nothing to do. I'll be there in 40 minutes. She hung up before I could argue. I put the phone back in my pocket and looked at the 4 people standing in my kitchen. Mom with her jaw set, Megan with mascara threatening to run, Dad examining the grain pattern of my kitchen table like it held the answers to everything, and Garrett, standing apart from all of them, watching the family he thought he knew rearrange itself in real time. Nobody was leaving, not yet. We moved to the living room, not by agreement, just gravity. People sit when they don't know what to do with themselves. Mom took the armchair, positioned herself like she was chairing a committee meeting. I recognized the posture. She was about to manage this. Garrett. She used her warm voice, the one she saves for company. I want you to understand. Tori is very talented in her own way. We're all proud of her. But yesterday was a special occasion. We wanted it to be focused. For Megan. And Tori understood that. Garrett leaned forward. Understood what, exactly? That it was best for everyone if she stayed away. I wouldn't put it like that. How would you put it? Mom's composure cracked, just a hairline fracture. Garrett, I have spent 30 years keeping this family together. I know what works and what doesn't. And when your daughter is meeting someone important… She stopped, caught herself, realized someone important was sitting 3 feet away staring at her. Garrett didn't flinch. Mrs. Morrison, I was the important guest. And the person I most wanted to meet in this town apparently wasn't invited to the dinner. Megan covered her mouth, not in shock, in damage control. She was calculating, fast, trying to find the angle that would make this go away. Dad sat in the corner of the couch. He hadn't spoken since he arrived. His hands were clasped between his knees. He looked like a man who'd been sitting exactly like that for 30 years. And I stood by the window, watching it all, the same way I've always watched my family perform. From the edges, from the doorway, from the kitchen. Only this time someone noticed I was standing there. The tears came right on schedule. Megan's chin trembled. Her eyes filled. She pressed her palm to her chest like she was holding something fragile together. I'd seen this performance at every family crisis since she was 16. The fight with Dad about the car, the time she maxed out Mom's credit card, the argument about moving to Atlanta. Megan cries, Mom comforts. Everyone else becomes the problem. You don't understand what it's like, Megan said, voice breaking beautifully. Growing up with someone who's always different. I was trying to protect everyone. I was trying to make sure the dinner went well. Mom crossed the room and put her arm around Megan's shoulders. Right there. In my living room. In my house. Comforting the person who erased me. See? Mom said, turning toward me. This is what happens, Tori. You always cause problems. I felt it land. 29 years of that sentence, and it still landed. But for the first time, I watched it land from the outside too. Because Garrett was watching. And Dad was watching Garrett watch. And in the silence that followed Mom's accusation, I saw something I'd never seen in this family's choreography before. A witness. Someone outside the system. Someone who hadn't been trained to accept that Megan's tears meant the conversation was over. Someone who didn't know the script. Garrett looked at Megan. Looked at Mom. Looked at me. His expression wasn't pity. It wasn't even sympathy. It was clarity. He was doing the math, and I could tell the numbers weren't adding up the way Megan needed them to. There it was. The script. 29 years of the same script. But this time, there was someone in the audience who hadn't bought a ticket. Garrett stood up. He didn't raise his voice, didn't gesture, just stood the way men stand when they've made a decision and are done waiting to deliver it. Megan? Calm, direct. You told me you didn't have a sister nearby. You told me she wasn't close to the family. You let me walk into Thanksgiving thinking there were 3 of you. I didn't lie. You erased her. The word landed like a hand on a table, clean, final. Mom tried to intervene. Garrett, please, this is a family matter. With all due respect, Mrs. Morrison, I'm speaking. He turned back to Megan, and his voice carried something heavier than anger, disappointment, the bone-deep kind. I built my company from a garage. I sanded floors for 3 years before anyone took me seriously. I know what these hands look like. He nodded toward me. I know what it costs to build something real with them. He paused. Let the room catch up. And you asked your family to hide the one person in this house who actually builds things with her hands, because you were ashamed of her. Megan opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Dad shifted on the couch. He was staring at Garrett like a man seeing his own silence described back to him by a stranger. Mom's arm had dropped from Megan's shoulders. She stood alone now, in the center of my living room, stripped of the narrative she'd spent decades polishing, the doting mother, the proud family, the well-curated life. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. The silence was doing all the work, and for once, I wasn't the one sitting inside it alone. I stepped away from the window. Mom. My voice was steady. I'd practiced this sentence without knowing it. Every time I bit my tongue, every time I swallowed a response, the words had been forming somewhere underneath. I need you to hear this. Tori, not now. Yes, now. She went quiet. I've been the one who set the table every Thanksgiving. I cooked, I cleaned, I left before dessert so Megan could have the room, and I did it because I didn't want Grandma Dot to see this family fall apart. Mom's jaw tightened. Megan looked at the floor. But yesterday, you didn't just leave me out. You told me I was an embarrassment, that my hands, these hands, would ruin Megan's night. I held them up, both of them, calloused, nicked, stained with walnut oil. The same hands everyone in this room had benefited from and nobody had acknowledged. I'm not angry, Mom. I'm done. Done with what? Done performing. Done being the person who holds everything together and gets hidden when company comes. I looked at Dad. I needed you to say something. For 29 years, Dad. Anything. He met my eyes. His were wet. He opened his mouth and closed it again. Classic Ron Morrison. I love this family, I said. But I will not sit at a table where I need permission to exist. The room held its breath. Then, the crunch of gravel in the driveway. A car door. The slow tap of a cane on the front steps. I knew that rhythm. Everyone in the room knew that rhythm. Grandma Dot was here, and she didn't knock. I want to stop here, just for a moment. That line. I will not sit at a table where I need permission to exist. I didn't rehearse it. It came from 29 years of swallowed words. And the look on my father's face when it landed, that look of a man hearing his own failure described in a single sentence, I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life. If you've ever had to say something like that to your own family, something that hurt you more than it hurt them, I see you. Type I see you in the comments. because some of us need to hear that today. Now, let me tell you about Grandma Dot walking through that door. The door opened, and Dorothy Henderson walked in like she owned every room she'd ever entered. 78 years old, a cane in one hand, her good church coat buttoned to the collar. Behind her, Margaret from next door waved once and backed the car out of the driveway. Smart woman, she knew when to leave. Grandma Dot surveyed the room. Linda by the armchair, arms folded. Megan with mascara tracks down both cheeks. Dad on the couch, hands still knotted between his knees. Garrett near the hallway, standing slightly apart from all of them. Me, in the center. "Well," Dot said, "looks like I missed Thanksgiving but made it just in time for the truth." Nobody laughed. Nobody was supposed to. She walked straight to me, took my hands, both of them right there, and held them up, exactly the way I'd held them up a minute ago. But Dot's grip was different. It wasn't defensive, it was proud. "These hands," she said, loud enough for every person in that room, "built my bookshelf, my nightstand, my granddaughter's crib. Yes, Megan, the one you used for 2 years before you donated it without asking." Megan flinched. Dot wasn't finished. "These are the best hands in this family, and the fact that they weren't welcome at your dinner table is something I will never understand and I will never forgive easily." "Mom, please," Linda started. Dot turned on her daughter with the precision of a woman who'd been saving this sentence. "Linda, I sat at your Thanksgiving table for 15 years watching you treat this child like the help. I kept quiet because I thought you'd see it yourself." She paused. "I was wrong." The room rearranged itself after Dot spoke. Not physically. Nobody moved. But the center of gravity shifted. Mom was no longer running this scene. Garrett cleared his throat. "Tori, I owe you an apology." "For what?" "I had no idea my girlfriend told her family to exclude you, especially because of me." "You didn't know." "I know now." He turned to Megan, and his voice dropped, not in volume, but in warmth. "You told me she'd embarrass you. The woman building a $47,000 dining table for my company would embarrass you." The number hit the room like a flash of lightning in a quiet field. $47,000. For a moment, nobody breathed. Mom's lips parted. Her eyes cut to me, then to the workshop door, then back to me. I could see the arithmetic happening behind her face, years of Tori's little hobby crumbling into dust. Dad looked up. Something in his posture straightened, just barely, like a man hearing a verdict. "That's," Megan's voice was small, "that's how much it costs?" "That's how much talent costs, Megan," Garrett said. He didn't say it cruelly. He said it the way someone corrects a fundamental misunderstanding, clearly, without pleasure. I didn't react to the number. I already knew what my work was worth. I price every commission myself. But for my family, standing in my house, in front of my workshop, surrounded by the evidence of a career they'd dismissed for 4 years, this was the first time they'd ever heard a dollar amount attached to my name. Garrett picked up his coat from the back of the chair. "I'd like to talk business with you, Tori. Separately." Then to Megan. "You and I need to talk too, but not here." Mom's composure broke. "This is ridiculous." Her voice had the high, ragged edge it gets when she feels the room slipping away from her. "Tori, you always have to make everything about you. We came here to help Garrett find a shop and now—" "Linda, stop." Grandma Dot's voice cut clean. Mom turned to her own mother, and something I'd never seen before happened. Linda Morrison's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, I have worked so hard to keep this family together. Everything I do, every dinner, every holiday, every phone call, is for this family. And nobody sees it. Nobody appreciates. You've worked hard to keep this family looking together." Dot leaned on her cane, steady as a post. "That's not the same thing, Linda. It has never been the same thing." Mom stood there, mouth open, no words. It was the most honest silence I'd ever witnessed in our family. Dad rose from the couch. He walked to Mom and put his hand on her shoulder. Didn't speak. But he didn't walk away either. For Ron Morrison, that was a revolution. Megan quietly. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Dot pivoted to her oldest granddaughter. "You didn't mean for it to be found out. That's different from not meaning it, sweetheart." Megan's face crumpled. Not the artful tears from before, something rawer. She turned toward the door, pulling her coat off the hook. "I need to leave," she whispered. Nobody stopped her. Garrett followed a few steps behind, keys already in his hand, his jaw set with the expression of a man who's just learned something he can't unlearn. Mom and Dad left last. Dad paused at the threshold, opened his mouth, closed it. Then, "I'm sorry, kiddo." 2 words. 30 years late, but he said them. When the door closed, it was just me and Grandma Dot. She lowered herself onto my couch with a sigh that carried about 50 pounds of tension. I sat beside her. Neither of us spoke for a long minute. The house was quiet the way a room gets after a storm passes through, still vibrating, but the wind is gone. "You did good, Tori." "I don't feel good." Doing the right thing doesn't always come with a good feeling. Sometimes it just comes with a clear one. I looked at my hands again. I'd been looking at them a lot in the last 48 hours. This time, though, I wasn't ashamed. And I wasn't proud. I was just settled. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "You're going to anyway." "Why did you stay quiet so long? If you saw what was happening..." She took a breath. "Because I thought your mother would come around. Because I didn't want to be the one to blow the family apart. Same reasons you stayed quiet, I imagine." She was right. Exactly right. "But today I realized something," she continued. "I don't need you to sacrifice yourself so I can have a peaceful holiday. I need you to live right. And living right means telling the truth, even when the truth makes Thanksgiving uncomfortable." I leaned into her shoulder. She smelled like lavender and peppermint, the same as when I was 8 years old. "I'm not asking them to apologize," I said. "I don't need that to know what I'm worth." "Good. But if they want me at the table again, they invite me as family, not as staff." Dot squeezed my hand. "And if they can't? Then I'll build my own table. I'm pretty good at that." She laughed. First real laugh I'd heard all day. 2 hours later, a knock at the workshop door. Garrett. Alone. He'd changed into a plain Henley and jeans, which somehow made him look more like himself than the cashmere coat had. He stood in the doorway for a moment, hands in his pockets, looking at the half-finished chairs on the bench. "I'm sorry for the circus this morning," he said. "Wasn't your circus." He almost smiled. "Fair enough." He stepped inside, ran his hand along the arm of a finished chair. "I'll get to it. I want to propose a partnership. Morrison Woodcraft supplies custom pieces for Callaway interiors. Not a one-time thing. Ongoing." I kept sanding the chair seat I was working on. Didn't stop. "Why?" "Because this table is the best piece I've commissioned in 10 years, and I commission a lot. I want this quality in my showrooms." "I'm a one-person operation." "I know. I'm not asking you to scale. I'm asking you to keep doing what you're doing, and let me put it in front of people who'll pay for it." I considered this, set down the sandpaper, looked him in the eye. "Send the terms to my project manager. I'll review them next week." He blinked, then nodded slowly. "I expected that." "Good." He paused at the door before leaving. "For what it's worth, Tori, I grew up in a family that didn't see what I was building either. Took me years to stop explaining and just keep working. The work speaks. It always does." After he left, I stood in the workshop for a long time. The table gleamed under the overhead lights. 8 chairs, $47,000, 6 months of early mornings and late nights. The work speaks. I picked up the sandpaper and got back to it. That night, after Dot had been driven home and the house was quiet again, I called her. "You okay, baby?" "I don't know, but I feel lighter." Lighter is good. Lighter means you put something down. I sat on the workshop floor, back against the wall, phone pressed to my ear. Through the window, I could see the stars, clear and cold, the way they get in late November in Georgia when there's no cloud cover. "Grandma, can I tell you something?" "Mm-hmm." "After Mom's call on Tuesday, the one where she told me to stay away." I sat here and looked at my hands, and for about 10 seconds, I was ashamed of them. I actually felt ashamed of these hands. Dot was quiet. And then I got angry at myself for being ashamed. And then I got tired of being angry, and then I just went back to work. "Your grandfather," Dot said, and her voice softened the way it only does when she talks about him. Told me something before he passed. He said, "Dot, the one in this family who can hold a chisel without flinching, that's the one who'll be all right." I closed my eyes. He was talking about you, Tori. He saw it when you were 9 years old, carving a little bird out of a block of pine in his garage. He knew. I cried then. Not the loud kind, the quiet, slow kind that comes when someone tells you a thing you needed to hear 20 years ago. "I don't need you to sacrifice so I can be happy," Dot said. "I need you to live right." "You said that already today." Some things are worth repeating. The next morning, 2 emails waited in my inbox. The first email was from Dana at Callaway Interiors. A partnership proposal. 6 pages, professionally formatted. I saved it for Monday. The second was from Dad. The subject line read, "From Dad," as if I might not recognize his name. "Tori, I should have said something years ago. I'm not good at this. Your mother loves you, but she doesn't see you. I want to say that's not my fault, but I know it is because I never said anything when I should have. I watched you build that shop from nothing. I watched you work 18-hour days. I watched you bring that table to life piece by piece, and I never once told you I was proud of you. I'm proud of you. I always was. I was just too quiet. I don't know if I can fix what's broken. But I want you to know I see you, Tori. I should have said it at the dinner table. I should have said it in front of your mother. I should have said it every single time she asked you to step aside so Megan could shine. I'm sorry, kiddo." Dad, I read it 3 times. Then I closed my laptop, walked to the workshop, and picked up a chisel. I didn't write back that night. Not because I was angry, because I needed the words to mean something when I did. A quick reply would have let him off the hook. A carefully considered one might actually start something real. So I worked. The way I always work when I need to think. Hands moving, mind sorting, sawdust piling up around my boots. Some things take time. Furniture. Trust. Father's learning to speak. I'd give him the time, but I wouldn't fill his silence for him. Not anymore. 2 weeks later, the news made its way through the usual channels, which in a town this size means it moved through the diner, the church parking lot, and the hair salon in roughly 72 hours. Garrett and Megan were done. Not a blowout, no public scene. He just told her, plainly, that he needed someone who didn't hide parts of their life. Megan moved back to Atlanta, changed her Instagram to private. She called me on a Wednesday afternoon. I was staining a bench for a client in Savannah. "This is your fault," she said. No greeting. "If you'd just stayed away like Mom asked." Megan. "He was going to propose. Did you know that? Christmas Eve. He told me after we broke up. Christmas Eve, Tori, and you ruined it." Megan. "He didn't leave because of me. He left because of what you told him about me." Silence. "You think you're better than me now?" Her voice cracked. "Because some guy liked your little table?" "No, I think I've always been equal. You just couldn't afford to see that." I heard her breathing, ragged, hurt, furious. Part of me ached for her, genuinely. Megan isn't a monster. She's a woman who built her identity on being the impressive one, and when the scaffolding gave way, she didn't know how to stand without it. But I couldn't carry her weight anymore, not at the cost of my own bones. "When you're ready to talk about what actually happened, not about what I did to your relationship, I'm here. You know the number." I hung up, set the phone on the workbench, picked up the staining brush. The wood doesn't care who's angry, it just needs you to show up and finish the job. Mom didn't call. I heard about her from Grandma Dot, the way you learn about weather systems, secondhand, at a distance, watching the clouds from somewhere dry. Linda cried for 3 days. Not about Garrett leaving Megan, though that hurt, about what Dot had said to her in my living room, the 15 years of watching, the silence that wasn't really silence, the difference between looking together and being together. Linda stopped coming to Dot's house for a week, which, in our family, is the equivalent of a diplomatic incident. Dot told me this on the phone, matter of fact, the way she reports everything. "Your mother's sulking," she said. "She does that when she's wrong and hasn't figured out how to make it someone else's fault." I almost laughed. Then Dot added, "She came over yesterday, though, sat at the kitchen table, The one you built, by the way, when you were 26, and cried into her coffee. What did she say? Nothing worth repeating yet. She's still in the part where she feels sorry for herself. The part where she feels sorry for what she did to you. That comes later. If it comes. You think it will? Dot paused. Your mother isn't evil, Tori. She's afraid. She's been afraid since she almost lost your father 15 years ago over money, and she decided the only way to stay safe was to make sure this family looked successful from the outside. Megan was her proof. You were the thing that didn't fit the frame. That doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't. But it makes it human. And human things can change. I held the phone and said nothing for a while. Then, I'm not calling her first, Grandma. Nobody asked you to. December settled in. Cold mornings, frost on the workshop windows, the smell of coffee and sawdust before sunrise. I signed the Callaway partnership. Not exclusive. I kept the right to take independent commissions. Garrett's team was professional about it. Dana sent the final contract with a sticky note that read, he wasn't kidding, best table he's ever seen. The first new order came in the week before Christmas. A custom credenza for a restaurant redesign in Charleston. Then another, a conference table for a law firm in Savannah. The Callaway name opened doors. My work kept them open. I hired Jake Phelps. 21, local kid, broad shoulders, quiet mouth. Dropped out of community college because he hated desks, but loved building things with his hands. His father told him he was wasting his life. Sound familiar? I started him on basic joinery. He picked it up fast. By the second week, he was cutting dovetails cleaner than I was at his age. Grandma Dot came to the workshop every Saturday. She'd sit in the rocking chair I made her 2 Christmases ago, a blanket on her lap, a mug of Earl Grey in her hand, and watch us work. Sometimes she'd tell stories about Grandpa, the projects he'd done, the clients who'd come back 30 years later to say the furniture still held. Jake listened to every word. I didn't get a fairy tale ending. No tearful family apology at the door. No Hallmark moment where Mom shows up with flowers and says she was wrong. But I got something better. I got clarity. I got a workshop full of good wood and honest work. I got a grandmother who sees me, a father who's learning to speak, and a table of my own. That's enough. Let me talk to you directly for a moment. I spent 29 years thinking that keeping quiet was the same as keeping peace. That if I just absorbed the slights, ignored the favoritism, showed up early and left late, the love would come. That one day, Mom would look at me the way she looked at Megan. That Dad would say out loud what I hoped he was thinking. That the family I kept propping up would finally prop me back. It didn't work that way. Keeping quiet wasn't keeping peace. It was keeping their comfort, at the cost of mine. I don't hate my parents. I don't hate Megan. Hating them would mean they still control how I feel about myself, and they lost that power the moment I said, I understand, and hung up the phone. What I learned, what I'm still learning, is this. The people who love you don't ask you to shrink so someone else can look bigger. They don't hide you when company comes. They don't measure your worth by how presentable you look at a dinner table. And if they do, you don't owe them your silence. You don't owe them your disappearance. You don't owe them another Thanksgiving in the kitchen while they take credit for your work. You owe yourself the truth. I'm not saying it's easy. Standing in my living room, telling my mother I was done, my voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. Setting a boundary with someone who raised you feels like cutting a rope while you're still climbing it. But here's what I know now. The ground was always closer than I thought. And the fall didn't break me. The silence did. For 29 years, the silence almost did. So here's where things stand. I see Dad on Saturdays. He drives the 40 minutes to my workshop, parks in the gravel lot, and comes inside. Sometimes he helps sweep up. Sometimes he just sits on the stool by the window and watches me work. We don't talk about Mom. Not yet. He's not ready, and I'm not going to push. But he shows up, every Saturday, rain or shine. And for Ron Morrison, that's more than he's done in 30 years. I call Grandma Dot every evening, not because I have to, because I want her to know that the person she believed in is doing just fine. She tells me about her day. I tell her about whatever I'm building. Last week she asked me to make a spice rack for her kitchen. Nothing fancy, she said. Just something with your hands on it. I'm using cherry. She'll love it. Mom hasn't called. I'm not waiting by the phone. If she does, I'll listen. I won't pretend the last 29 years didn't happen, but I'll listen. Because Grandma Dot is right. Mom isn't evil. She's afraid, and fear makes people do ugly things to the ones closest to them. Megan texted me once. 3 words. Can we talk? I wrote back. When you're ready to talk about what happened, not about what I did to your relationship, I'm here. She hasn't responded. That's been 6 weeks now. And that's okay. Healing doesn't run on a schedule. Some wood needs months to dry before you can shape it. You rush the process, it cracks. I'm giving them the time. But I'm not standing still while they figure it out. I've got tables to build, Christmas morning, the workshop. Grandma Dot is in her rocking chair by the window, wearing the red cardigan she's had since 1998. She's got a mug of tea in one hand and she's telling Jake about the time Grandpa built a rocking horse for the church auction and accidentally made it life-sized. Jake is laughing so hard he has to set down his chisel. Dad is in the corner, pushing a broom around a pile of shavings that doesn't really need sweeping. He's wearing a flannel shirt I've never seen before, not his usual khakis and polo uniform. He looks different, lighter, like a man slowly remembering who he was before he started disappearing. On my workbench, the signed Callaway contract, a new set of plans for a walnut credenza, and a small card from Dot that reads, "Merry Christmas, Builder Girl." Grandpa would be so proud. I pick up a plane and run it along the edge of a board. The curl of wood peels away, thin as paper, and the grain underneath is flawless. Clean. Honest. No knots, no cracks, no hidden rot. I think about my mother's phone call. The words that broke something open. You would embarrass her. I think about Garrett in the workshop doorway, Dot holding my hands, Dad's email, Megan's silence. I look at my hands, calloused, nicked, stained with linseed oil and walnut dust, rough in all the places that matter. My mother said these hands would embarrass my sister. Garrett said these hands were the reason he drove 40 minutes across town. Grandma Dot said these hands were the best thing in this family. But I'll tell you what these hands really are. They're mine. And that's enough. That's my story. And if you made it this far, thank you. Not just for watching, for believing that someone's worth isn't measured by how presentable they look at a dinner table. Now I want to hear yours. Drop a comment. Have you ever had to draw a line with someone who was supposed to love you without conditions? Did it cost you the relationship, or did it save you? And if this story hit close to home, if you've ever been the one setting the table and leaving before dessert, check out the video linked in the description. It's about someone else who chose dignity over disappearing. I think you'll recognize her. I'll see you there.